And when you talk about the Seahawks, who do you mention first? Geno Smith. What a year last season. 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, comeback player of the year. This is a loaded offense. Pete Carroll has seemingly reinvented this team. Just a couple years ago, we were talking about how stagnant that offense was, how they had really very little identity outside of Russell Wilson running for his life and throwing on the run. Russell leaves. I thought last year the Seahawks were going to be just absolutely terrible. Instead, they were fantastic, and they've done a really nice job in the offseason. This is a solid football team.
Right, but they're not sneaking up on anybody this year. They're only 2-1 to win the NFC West behind one of the best teams in the entire NFC. And I think that's where it starts is, has the market gotten too high on the Seattle Seahawks? And do we think that they will be able to replicate this level of success? And I think you start by looking at the point differential, because despite a 9-8 record last season, or maybe, 9-8, it's not like they were, 11-5 or something, or whatever the math adds up to. They had a +6 point differential, which is not bad, but it's not like they're beating up on teams. They won a lot of close games last year. So maybe the ball doesn't, bounce their way in every single close game this season. Look at the Niners. Their point differential last year was +173. That is how dominant San Francisco was in some of those games. So I think the other question is, like you said, do we expect another big season from Geno Smith? And I'm kind of torn on this, because this is the first time in a while that he has gotten the full reign of the offense, where he's gotten to play every single game since about the year 2014. I'm sure he's learned a lot waiting in the wings and being a backup. Like, I think he's been paying attention. He's probably learned the game pretty well, sitting back and watching all of these games. So I'm sure he has a good handle on the offense and how to play quarterback, but still, I think teams will not be looking down on the Seahawks this year. I think the target will squarely be on their backs. Although I will say this, they have a ton of weapons at their disposal. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba coming from Ohio State, and also Kenneth Walker III. What an addition he was to the backfield last season. So the offense has the weapons. I think the question is, do they have enough weapons to go toe-to-toe with the San Francisco 49ers? And I still think the answer is no.
I think you're right about that. I will also say, do not sleep on this Seattle defense. They brought back Bobby Wagner, made a name for himself in Seattle as a future Hall of Famer, spent one season in LA, but he was still a Pro Bowler last season. They cut him because of salary reasons, so he's back where he belongs. Jamal Adams played only one game last year when he is healthy. He's a fantastic safety, so he'll be ready to go. Quandre Diggs, still one of the better-than-average safeties in the NFL. You've got Tariq Woolen in his second year. He led the NFL in interceptions last season, and they drafted Devin Witherspoon, whom I absolutely love, out of Illinois. So if you look at teams that have done a nice job of building their roster, Seattle is certainly right there.
For me, this is a team that feels like they're going to be very motivated this season. Especially, you look and see how the season ended last year in that disaster of a game against the Eagles, in which they basically didn't have a quarterback. I remember watching that game and thinking, oh my God, Brock Purdy can't throw the ball. And I think the Eagles finally figured that out too, because, you just stack the box and stop the run. And then they had Christian McCaffrey trying to throw passes. So it felt like a disaster of an ending to a season that was actually a very nice regular season. Like I said, their point differential was through the roof. This is a great defense. This is a great offense. I think they should be one of the favorites to win the NFC for a reason. I'll take them at +350. I'll take the nibble. Here's the question. If the Eagles and the Niners are the Eagles are +260, the Niners are +350, do you take both of those and assume that one of those teams is going to win? Because at those prices, you would still be up money. You could lose one of those. Even if you won one, since the plus money's on the card, you'd still win some money. So do you think it's the Eagles or the Niners?
Yeah, I do. I actually like that strategy quite a bit. I think it's a hell of a strategy because, as we've talked about on this show, the NFC is just top heavy, and then the bottom drops out. I'm trying to think of someone who could challenge either one of those two teams. And God, I don't know who it would be. Who do you?
Probably the Cowboys.
Yeah, I was
Like,
going
they're
to say the
next on the
Cowboys.
list, but do you trust the Cowboys in the postseason? I
No,
don't.
no, not. I think that's a hell of an idea. Yeah, barring injury, which is I always hate saying barring injury because I feel like that's a given in any bet ever. Injuries are
Yes.
always a part of any bet. But ultimately, yeah, you have to love both of these teams. And what I love about the Niners in particular is their defense is so solid. So I mentioned that Seattle defense doesn't hold a candle to the Niners defense. Number one in total defense last year. Of course, they have Nick Bosa. They have Fred Warner. He's a two-time first-team All-Pro. Talanoa Hufanga, first-team All-Pro. So as many weapons as Seattle has offensively, they can just stifle you defensively. And that's how the Eagles won their games last year, right? They were talented on offense, but they were just monsters on defense, racking up more sacks than anyone in the NFL. So I really like that idea.
Who is on your no bet list? Because you nailed it. Lance Lynn is on mine. I think other pitchers that are kind of confounding to me is Rich Hill. Every time I think he's terrible, he'll like strike out 12. And also Charlie Morton. I feel like he'll either give up like 5 runs or he'll be amazing. It feels like there's no in between. So who's on the no bet list for you?
Yeah, you were naming some of my favorites. Rich Hill, definitely on my no bet list. No, thank you. There was a nice little run going, and I was like, this is definitely going to change, and he's going to shut down. You're going to have like a lamp where he's going to shut down a big offense. So, yeah, those are some of my pitchers that you listed that are on my list. There are some teams as well that are on my list. I'm looking back here to see. I mean, I don't keep like a formal list, but there are teams that I don't touch. I haven't messed much with the Cardinals this year, and when I have, I've usually been burned one way or another. I did finally give them a go again the other day, was looking into some info that I liked, and of course, they lost by a run. I believe it was the game, what was it, 2 nights ago, where Jordan
Was
Hicks
it
threw the
against the
ball away.
Marlins? Yeah.
It was against the Marlins, and I'm like, geez. I mean, well, they were losing, and they came back. AJ Puck blew the save, who actually came on the show yesterday, right after that, and then Jordan Hicks throws a ball away, and you're like, all right, screw this, not their year. For a while this year, most of this year, I would say the Mets, the any other teams that I haven't touched this year? I'd have to look. I do have one that was very much on my like yes fly list.
Hmm.
Definitely, I've
Mhm.
been hitting Marcus Stroman starts pretty heavily, and that kind of kept on a nice streak, especially against weaker opponents. I know it seems obvious, but I would say there were 2 locks this year that I would call like super locks, where I turned and Eric Kratz tailed me on them. I turned him and I was like, dude, am I missing something here? Like there was it was I think the Pirates had lost like 6 in a row. The Cubs were on one of their streaks and they've been super streaky, and it was Stroman like in that start was like minus 125 tops, maybe less. And I was like, how is this not like in the 140 range? And I was like, does someone know something that we're looking at injury
Yeah.
reports? I'm like, no, he's fine. And they crushed him. So there's been a couple of those. So I'd put him on the other end against weaker opponents, just weak contact city, ground balls, and rack up dubs.
Chelsea, take your pick. Who is the favorite of those 3 going into this year for the NBA's Eastern Conference? Boston, Milwaukee, or Philadelphia?
Has to be the Bucks, right? Because here's the thing. I know everybody is thinking of that disaster that we saw from the Bucks in the postseason this year, getting beat by the Miami Heat, the lowly 8 seed or whatever seed they were. Well, listen, the Heat turned out to be a pretty solid team, went all the way to the NBA Finals. And also, Giannis wasn't 100% healthy for that series. He is still one of the best players in the entire NBA. I think you could probably make a case for him being the MVP of the regular season last year. So I'm going to go with the Bucks here. They're still an extremely deep team if they can stay healthy, because last year Chris Middleton wasn't healthy for a long stretch either, was on a minutes restriction. So a team that has a ton of depth, a team that has postseason experience, and a team that has one of the best players in the NBA, give me the Milwaukee Bucks.
I am in full agreement with you, Chelsea. I think I will say this. I think the Bucks made a mistake in overreacting and firing Coach Budenholzer after that first round loss to Miami. And why? Because we saw that Miami, I know hindsight's 2020, but I thought it was a mistake at the time. Miami proved, oh, by the way, They almost won the damn NBA title. So they lost to a team that was playing exceptional basketball. But to your point, this is such a great team. I think that's what makes me such a fan of the Bucks, because they had the best record of the regular season. They probably should have advanced in the playoffs, but they're still young enough and experienced enough, and they've already won an NBA title. I also think they're going to be motivated this upcoming season after their disappointment from last year. So I'm going with Milwaukee as well.